Hey, I tried to start it. Hello and welcome back inside the Park for May for podcast number 922. It's Todd.
No, Todd, not now.
AKA Negative Camera. You know why I've asked you here?
You must convince the villagers that I'm harmless.
Yeah, why not? Why not?
Seriously, Todd?
Yes, seriously.
Stop yelling at Todd.
Yes, stop yelling at me. Tonight, for your kind consideration, we're going to cover some Formula One news because there is Formula One news to cover this glorious Monday evening. But before doing that, of course, I have to introduce my co-host. She's been around. She's been a co-host for a long time now. That's right. You know who it is. Nestled in our nation's capital on the right coast of America, just outside of our capital. You know her. You love her. The lovely, the redoubtable Grace. Ooh, Grace. How are things in Maryland?
I'm still standing.
Have you ever met British people that call it Maryland?
Oh, I have.
So literal.
Yes, right. Well, I mean, so I recently had a similar discussion. So there's a place in Pennsylvania called Lebanon, Pennsylvania. Now that's pronounced Lebanon, not Lebanon,
right,
which is how it's spelled. So if somebody said to me, "Oh, I'm going to Lebanon," I'm like, "Are you sure, Todd? That seems like a bad idea. It's very, Middle East is a little messy over there right now. Are you sure?" I don't know. Pennsylvania. Oh, that's Lebanon, Pennsylvania. It's totally different.
They have the same town in Illinois called Lebanon, but it's spelled Lebanon.
See,
same thing.
Right. I'm like, if somebody said to me, "I'm going to Lebanon," I'd be like, "No, Lebanon. Yeah, pick me up some bologna while you're there." Right. Like we're done.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my! It's hey. Before we get into the news, I want to take a moment and just give a shout out to, and I know you know these folks, Grace. Give a shout out to Clark and the crew over at F1 Weekly. The tragic news came out. One of our listeners who listens to F1 Weekly had sent me a heads up, and I didn't know it, but Nasser Hamid has passed away over at F1 Weekly, and Nasser is just a charming guy and a very humble beginnings and a massive motorsport fan. He was like he was just a well of motorsport history. And I loved his calendars and his passion. He was always really kind to us and always spoke well of us and just a great guy. And, Clark and Nasser's family, our deepest condolences go out to all of you. And Clark and team were podcasting before we were. We started late 2006 and they were already podcasting, so they've been doing it a long time, just like we have. And so anyway, Clark and the family of the Hamid family, our deepest condolences go out to all of you. In the famous words of Clark, keep up the good work, and wishing you all the best in this very difficult time. So very, very sorry to hear that. And slightly more positive news, our own Paul Charsley and the Heart of Racing Aston Martin team podium finish at Daytona 24 Hour, the Rolex 24. Congratulations, Ian James, Paul Charsley, the entire team at Heart of Racing who worked their tails off. Unfortunately, their GTD Pro car had a bizarre mechanical issue. The left rear wheel just coming off 9 laps after a change, but they were out of the race. But the number 27, great driving, finished on the podium briefly, with 15 minutes, 20 minutes left in the race. We're leading, and then got a little punchy between Matthew Bell and them. But it's all hard racing and a great way for Paul and team to start out the championship and third in the championship. Yeah. So fantastic effort. It was a really good race. Penske, Porsche, took the overall. It's Penske. It's the captain.
It's the captain. He knows what he's doing.
He's done this a time or two.
He knows some things.
He knows some things, doesn't he? Yeah. What a class operation. I've met Roger a couple times, toured their IndyCar garage and Tim Cindric, and just that whole team is just professionals. They're just a well-oiled machine. Great people. Roger, super. I mean, this is the captain, and he would have sat there an hour and talked to me. He was just a delightful guy, a prince of a guy. So anyway, congratulations, Paul. Play golf at Plaz.
Yes.
That is great for them. But let's jump into some F1 news because I got some things to talk about, Grace.
I don't know how that happened, honestly, but
No,
these are like the dark days of Formula One.
it is the dark days. Yeah.
Not Todd. He comes through every time.
Thanks to Lewis.
Oh, God.
Thank you, Lewis. So first thing I want to talk about, this struck me as a little bit odd, and there's been some talk. I think Martin Brundle's sort of weighed in over at Sky on this, and some really good just news articles about it in general. But there were some decent editorials about this, and I'm gonna. I think in this story I quote Autosport, I think, who had a decent editorial by Ben over there. But anyway, the FIA came out and made some changes to their sporting code. And the FIA said this, quote, "The new appendix to the FIA International Sporting Code aims to further enhance transparency and consistency in decision-making. All major governing bodies, including the likes of the NFL, FIFA, and IOC, have similar rules/fines to protect the integrity of the sport. The FIA is not alone in fining competitors for misconduct. The aim of this new appendix is to provide clear guidance to stewards regarding the penalties for violations of specific ISC articles. By establishing a more structured framework, the FIA seeks to ensure that penalties are applied uniformly and transparently, benefiting both stewards and driver competitors. Stewards have the authority to decide what penalty to enforce in the event of a breach of the International Sporting Code, or ISC, and or the applicable FIA regulations. Stewards retain the discretion to take into account any mitigating and or aggravating circumstances, as well as the nature of the location of the event, the location's an important one, to tailor the penalty to specific situation," end quote.
That's right.
So there's another piece that Ben at Autosport brought up, and I'll read that in a minute, but I just want to put a pin in it now before I continue. I'm curious what your thought is on this. I agree that F-bombing and post-race interviews is uncalled for, and I also agree that in the heat of the moment, during the race, getting a radio message with colorful language, in my mind, is kind of understandable. It's, you see it in stick and ball sports with athletes doing, during the play. It happens. It's raw emotion. You get cut off. I mean, in the Rolex 24, you had Tommy Milner sticking his hand out, giving the bird to a BMW. So, it happens. That's raw emotion. I get that. I think there's certainly a lot of people saying, hey, that's just the raw emotion. And I would agree with them during the heat of the battle and all that. While they're sitting on the couch being interviewed by Tom and F-bombing, I don't know that that's called for. And I kind of understand the FIA's point there. The more worrying addition, though, let me put a pause in there. Let me get your thoughts on that, Grace.
I mean, I think the thing is okay. So it's not as if this never happened before, right? Now, some of it is right. We have much more insight in all sports, right? You have, Mike and the athletes, or, so we hear much more of that over radio and stuff like that than we used to ever have, 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah,
right.
Right.
But it is the manner at which this is being dealt with, as opposed to, it's not like, oh, you mean nobody ever dropped the F-bomb while Jean Todt was in charge? That just never happened, right? Like it makes it sound like all of a sudden they're just like a bunch of sailors driving around the track or something, right? Like, I think it is fair to say, hey, here are some things, please follow them. And we all go, oh, okay, right? Like, we have a podcast. I cuss like a sailor, but I don't on the podcast. Why? Because that's not what we do, and it'll affect our rating, and children listen to this, right?
Right.
I mean, I think we all have the capacity to, code switch or whatever it is. I don't drop the F-bomb in front of my mom. That would be, I think she'd fall over and die. I think even just her hearing the statement that I know that word would make her fall over. So I think we all have that, that capacity, if you care, to modulate your language as needed. And they're athletes, they're Formula One drivers. They do it all the time, right? Like, they all have a very polished presentation self to them, right? They all have the ability of, coach speak, to say 20 words but say nothing, right? Like, they're all coached up on that by this point, how to do that. So I don't think it's that they don't follow the rules, because I think that in a lot of other sports, those things that bring the sport into ill repute are not just dropping cuss words, right?
Yep. Yeah. That's true. And I agree with you. I think, it happens. Well, remember Sebastian Vettel. Well, here's a message for Charlie. F off, right?
Right.
But like I said, like I said, that was in the heat of the action on the radio, right? And I understand that happens. The more worrying addition is the following clause, which relates directly to the FIA. It lists the forbidding of, quote, any words, deeds, or writings that have caused moral injury or loss to the FIA, its bodies, its members, or its executive officers, and more generally on the interest of motorsport and on the values defended by the FIA, end quote.
Is that like, okay, so like in basketball, this is probably true in every sport, but in basketball, where you're real close to the ref, you can't touch the ref, right?
Mm-mm.
Like you can kind of be like, hey, Todd, are you blind? Did you not see that? And that's it. And you got to walk away, right? Because if you push that ref or get in their face too much, you're going to get a technical and you're out, right? Like, I understand that there has to be this place where you can plead your case, but you can't become aggressive towards the referees. Is that what we're trying to apply here? That we're trying to say that these stewards are like, you can plead your case, but don't get too close, right?
Yeah, and I think that there was probably an unwritten understanding of that. When Seb said, "Here's a message for Charlie F off," he got fined. I mean, they nobody liked that. In football games, if after the loss by the Giants, if the head coach got on the TV on the next day and started calling the refs, terrible, and they should be fired, and they're the worst refs, that's a real problem, right?
Yes.
And the NFL wouldn't stand for it, and nor should they, and the FIA shouldn't either. And I agree that, but it's interesting in the wording. Have caused moral injury or loss to the FIA, its bodies, its members, or its executive officers. Now, I find this interesting because...
Is that MSB?
Yeah,
like
MBS.
MBS?
Yeah, exactly what
Their
it is.
executive officer? Okay.
Exactly what that is. Do you remember, he recently, I just feel like this is a more personalized element to the sporting code. MBS recently changed the FIA process to avoid internal investigations of the executives. And now this seems to offer a risk of fines for anyone who disagrees or criticizes him. At least it could be interpreted that way. And I was thinking about it over the weekend, Grace, and I was thinking, why such narrow wording around that? Why does it call out, it's one thing to say, denigrating or causing moral injury or harm or loss to the FIA or its members. You could just leave it there.
Yeah.
Because all the employees of the FIA would constitute the organization, the FIA, but it specifically calls out its members or its executive officers, right? Yeah. I thought that was interesting.
I agree. Why did you feel the need to write specifically you?
Yeah. It's because he's getting hammered right now by teams, by the GPDA, by the media. Yeah.
So there's a difference between me saying, Todd, I don't agree with you, period. What if we did things this way? Or what do you think about covering this story? Or what, I can disagree with you and we can be rational people about it. It's not okay for me to be like, oh, Todd, right? Like, that's not okay, right? So I think that this to me sounds more like I'm not allowed to speak against Todd at all, right? Like, everything you say, I do and I agree with, and that sounds great. How dare I even remotely say, hey, maybe the number of piercings I have isn't your business, sir?
I know. And I was thinking, well, what the hell? What the hell?
Yeah, really?
I don't exactly understand why that wording. So then I got to think about it over the weekend. I was thinking, if memory serves correctly, I can recall drivers being critical of the FIA when Max Mosley was in charge. And there were threats and fines for a more general sporting code which was, quote, bringing the sport into disrepute, end quote.
Right. I mean, that's always there, right?
That was a wide net and something that Max wielded with ruthless efficiency to anything he wasn't pleased with. Yeah. And I feel like if you've got that, why do you need this? Because technically what Seb did over the radio to Charlie, that's bringing the sport into disrepute, right? Even MBS himself, ran into the issues with some talk that a lot of females didn't like. And then there was this whole investigation of Susie Wolf. And, you could argue that that's bringing the sport into disrepute, right? Accusations, hints, and innuendos. And, when you think about drivers that have kind of fallen under that sort of bringing the sport into disrepute, you got Fernando Alonso, Jacques Villeneuve, McLaren, Max Mosley himself, Sebastian Vettel, many, many more have been pointed at as bringing the sport into disrepute, and fine.
Jacques Villeneuve, in multiple roles that he's had around the sport, has brought it into disrepute.
His current role. For me, the point is there was a sporting code that covers these kinds of situations, and there is a precedent in the past of using that for that kind of behavior that's frowned upon, right?
Right.
So it's without adding, you can't say anything about the executive officers. I find that cheap. If you juxtapose the era of Jean Todt, as you said earlier, there's no less criticism. There's no less criticism or controversy. And yet he didn't engage in power trip intended to punish those who criticized him. Even Max was more leveled in his approach than I think what MBS is trying to do. Change the regulations so nobody can say anything, critical of me, And it's like, I don't know how you do things down in the Middle East there, MBS, but that's a little aggressive, don't you think?
I'm just gonna put this out here. You've raised children. One thing that doesn't usually work is that if you say, "Don't do that," what's the first thing they turn around and do? They do that, right? Like that is also the other thing I don't get. Like by putting it this fine of a point and making it this public, as opposed to in a driver's meeting or somewhere where it's not so about you out loud, forward facing,
right?
That you're just pushing everybody that boundary, and they're all just going to be like, "Oh, well, don't you see? I think that counts as putting the sport in disrepute. What about you? What about this guy?" Right? Like it just is going to become a shenanigans show, and who wants that? When again, this happens, and I think that as fans and players, like you use the Vettel example, I think there are examples in other sports where like, yeah, that counts. It's like grabbing somebody's face mask or something, and you're like, oh, that wasn't anything. And then you watch the replay, and you're like, oh, yeah. All right, that was a horse collar. Cool. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, so I just think that this place exists. You always have that ability as the FIA, but you're making this a big spectacle for a reason, right? And it's just, it smells very, they talk about how Drive to Survive is kind of, nobody said it ruined the sport, but like it's ruined it because everybody now plays to the camera. Right. And everybody knows they're there and everybody knows they're listening. So nobody says anything anymore in a way that first year kind of had some pureness to it because nobody knew what to expect. But now it's like, oh, there's the boom mic. Yeah. I guess this race was great, Todd. Yeah. Cool.
That's wonderful. Great.
Right. Nobody's really it kind of ruins the sport in that way because you never get to hear that now because this just is another example of playing to the cameras.
Yeah, to me, it starts off with you can't have a nose stud, Lewis. You can't do this and the underwear gate. And I don't know, man. This is yet another aggressive, ham-fisted move, in my opinion. And this is just my opinion, but I think MBS seems completely ill-equipped for this role. He seems completely miscast for the play. It's a junior league performance in a role that demands a professional, and I just don't think it's there. I'm stunned there's not been a call for a vote of confidence for him, and he continues changing the FIA's regulations and codes to insulate himself and exert power, and it's just not what this organization was intended for. This organization wasn't set up to insulate some person in that role from criticism or he's apparently thin-skinned. That stuff just kind of rolled off. Now behind the scenes, is Jean Todt pissed off? Maybe. Did he seek some retribution? Maybe. But it wasn't out here in the public, you know? I mean, it's just, I don't know, this guy's got to go. Time for a change.
What I find is the most interesting point of all of this is that it's as if the FIA doesn't profit from them going in a way that is of it. You know, I mean, like, how much profit did they gain over Max Verstappen's little, you know, like, oh, I can't cuss in the driver's room, so I'm going to go outside and interview with the media, and I'm going to cuss all I want, right?
Right.
Like that didn't benefit you. That sort of like, you know, right? Any publicity is good publicity kind of angle. This again, it's the drive to survive. This all reeks to me of playing to the cameras and just like, well, if I say it now, and then later when somebody has some shenanigans, I can just be like, well, I put it in the rules. Stop dropping the F-bomb. Even though Drive to Survive is so full of the F-bomb that, you know, again, I have friends that have small children. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I never told you about Drive to Survive because you have children.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like an occasional, oh, you know, they say, you know, a small swear word.
No, with Gunther, it's every third word.
Right.
You know?
And so what are you going to do? You can't both profit and get mad about.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and I get it if you're out there, oh, you know, be an adult about it. You know, you can't handle language and blah, blah. That's not the point. Of course, we're all adults and we all know the same words and all that. But, you know, if you've got little kids, you know, and this goes just for, not just for F1, but any sport. If you've got little kids, got an 8-year-old that's watching football or baseball or hockey or whatever, you know, you don't want a string of blue language consistently, you know, that your kids are around. You'd like to start off with, you know, some advantage of trying to raise a respectable, decent human being without sounding like a sailor that are 8 years old, right? You'd prefer not to have it sit through all that. But, you know, I don't know. I just think this is, I don't know. It's time for a change. It really is. I don't know what they're doing over there.
I don't know.
After a little while, he's going to get where he doesn't, you know, he'll change the regulation. He's, you know, lifetime president or something. It's ridiculous.
I mean, I think the thing, just like, you know, in like a job, you know, Rex, it's always, you know, and other duties as assigned.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's always some sort of like open-ended clause. Like this is what your performance evaluation is and any other task is assigned.
Up to 60% travel.
That's right. So I think that that same thing kind of exists. Like, of course, the FIA has the ability to say, hey, we didn't write down, you know, I don't want to give an example of something, but you know what I mean? Like, we didn't exactly write in writing, don't do that.
Yeah.
But you did it, and I think we all agree that you shouldn't have.
Yeah,
so now
right.
We're going to do something about it. You don't have to spell it out.
Right.
We got it.
Yeah, agreed. Anyway, all right. So in other news in Formula One, this is an interesting, because if you listen to the podcast, you know Grace and I have been watching Hell's Kitchen, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It was a doozy this season.
Wasn't expecting Brandon. Didn't see that coming.
First to the black jacket, first without the black jacket?
Yeah, right.
Ooh,
Zing.
that was harsh.
Yeah, it was like, whoa, are you kidding? Oh, give me your black jacket. You're done.
I was waiting for like the Marino save or something. Like,
yeah,
you
right.
know,
Yes.
how about instead, we'll give Marino your black jacket, throw him out, and we'll keep you, Brandon.
Right.
Like,
right.
I
Oh,
guess
my.
I stuck with that.
Well, Gordon, you know, he's a big F1 fan. I don't know when he got into F1, if he's been into it since he was a lad or if he's gotten into it in the last 10 years. I don't know. But he's a big F1 fan. And he has done a deal with F1 to cater 10 races this year in the pit box area to be renamed Ramsay's Garage. So what they did is one of the pit boxes, they would have a caterer come in and put food in that pit box. So it's right there in the action. And so those super high-end sponsors and guests and stuff like that could be right there near the action and eat some, you know, good food and drink and that kind of thing. Well, he's now...
So this is my dream.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So I could just sit in Gordon Ramsay's pit box and watch this. This is my dream. This is great.
Right. You know, imagine you and I standing right there in the pit box now at Ramsay's Garage, right next to Haas.
Oh, no, it
And we could be sitting there drinking Prosecco,
Yeah.
and having finger food.
Right. Or be like, hey, Ted Kravitz, you want a chicken leg? You can't have one.
Right.
Have a nice day.
Yeah. Here's beef
You're
Wellington.
working.
Yeah. Here's the
course,
scallops. Yeah.
You can't have any.
Can't have any.
How about some risotto?
Risotto.
No, you can't have
No,
that.
can't have
You're
any of
working.
that. No. Oh boy. So he's got 10 races he's doing this year, and this is his quote. He says, "My passion for F1 is well known, but it's the complexity and speed of the cars and the talent of the many people who build and control them that appeals to me so much. In many ways, F1 is like a high-performance professional kitchen, so this is the perfect partnership for us and our growing international restaurant group. We're excited about what we can offer F1 Garage customers and can't wait to be on the starting line in Miami next May." So that'll be the first one is Miami.
Of course.
If you want to know the 10 races, in case you've got some coin and you're going to be, signing up for it, the 10 races that you could potentially enjoy a Gordon Ramsay catered event is Miami, Monaco, Montreal, Silverstone, Monza, Austin, Mexico City, Vegas, Lusail, and Yas Marina. So there you go.
Yeah.
Those are your 10 races. But I have a better idea.
Okay.
Since you and I are fans of Hell's Kitchen, I think they should do a Hell's Kitchen season using the garage as the kitchen and have the red and blue team square off serving VIPs and even having drivers come in to taste, and rank their creations. And for the taste test challenge, the blindfolded taste, they could have them munch on tire marbles, off the track, right? Or oil or some fuel or Red Bull or Monster or maybe some carbon fiber dust or something instead of vegetables. Right. You have to, but then that way, whoever wins gets to be the head chef of Gordon Ramsay's F1 catering program on Ramsay's Garage.
That'd be great.
See?
I would watch that.
Right there's your idea.
Has to be better than being in New England, frankly.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Fox, whatever it is. What is it? Fox?
I don't.
Something.
I don't know. I was gonna say Foxtrot. It's not it.
Yeah, I can't remember.
I don't know. Foxburg. I don't know. I did like that it's like all the tracks that start with the letter M and Silverstone, right? Like, and then I was like, maybe these are all cities where he already has restaurants, and then I was like, oh, except maybe Silverstone. So then I kind of like the idea. I don't know if he has one in Austin. I mean, I don't know if he has one. I know he has one in Vegas. That's really all I know. And I'm sure he has one in Miami.
Gotta have one in Miami, doesn't he? Yeah.
Probably, I'm sure.
Yeah.
We have one in DC. I'm sure he has one in Miami. And I just think that would be the idea of these are 9 cities in Silverstone that I have a restaurant in.
Yeah, right.
Because Silverstone's in the middle of nowhere, and I'm sure there's not a Hell's Kitchen in Silverstone.
Did you know it used to be a bomber base?
What? The airplanes, they used to just take off the infield.
You know
right?
why it was such a good location? Because it's so windy. Yeah.
Windy. Yeah, it's great.
Haven't heard that story before. So,
yeah.
So there you go. See, I think that would be a good idea.
I mean, think of all the things they could have to do in the paddock, right?
I know.
You just turn the kitchen the other direction, and you have all these people just milling around that you could have to try to convince to eat your food.
Well,
or
think of the punishments. Think of the punishments for the losing team. They got to scrub all the wheels, and clean all the wheels.
Here, you need to bring in Ron Dennis for the punishment.
Oh, yes.
You have to clean this to Ron Dennis's standards,
oh,
right?
Nice, Ron.
That would be perfect. Yeah, because you'd have to have the dustbuster out and everything have to be spotless.
Gordon, give us a call.
Yes.
This is a great, this has just gotten
better. We can make
right?
this work.
You got to clean this kitchen, and not only does it have to be clean, Ron Dennis
right.
has to do this.
It's like, blue team. Well, your punishment is... they knocked the nose cone off the Williams down there. You're going to have to go and fix the nose cone. You're going to have to clean the wheels. You're going to have to, who knows?
You could do, all the teams already do all those unbox videos, right? Like this season they did with the comedians. Like you have to teach the comedians how to cook. They could totally
teach
do that
the
with
drivers. Yeah. Teach the drivers how to cook.
Who's going to teach Lando Norris how to cook? I can't wait.
Right.
The guy stored paper towels in his oven. This can't lose.
See, if this goes through, Fisichella missed it because he'd have nailed it. because
But
he
they
makes
could
a
bring him
killer
back.
pizza. They could bring him
Again,
back.
I think we could do you could bring Yarno Truly back. I mean, we could do all sorts of
Yeah.
flashback drivers.
And
that
you know,
have
when he
great
has other
food
chefs
things.
come in and taste and kind of rank
Yeah.
and judge the dishes,
Yeah.
you know, the hell with the other chefs. Screw that. Have like former F1 drivers come. So you have Alain Prost in there, you know, and so Alain's got to, you know, figure out which one he likes, you know?
Could you imagine? He's like, "You're a donkey. Do you know who this is? You served him this. This looks like dog food. You just served Alain Prost dog food. How can you live with yourself?"
It's Gerhard Berger, you donut.
I love it.
Yeah.
We again, Gordon, call us. We've got.
I know, I got it.
Clearly, in 10 minutes, we've already storyboarded like a good season for you.
It's already a good start to a season. Season 1 is practically done.
Done. We got this.
All right. Call us, Gordo.
I mean, you have all that space at Miami too, and inside the football arena.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, another thing is, you know, for the big bake off or whatever, they'd have to come and make dishes for an entire team, you know? So they got 10 teams to choose from.
Right.
You know?
Right. That's right.
I think that's good. All right.
I'm here for that.
Hey, another big news this past week. Don't know if you saw this. Maybe you missed it. Small story.
Yeah. Who missed this? I think people who aren't even into Formula One are like, "Oh yeah, I didn't miss this."
Yeah.
Right? I want to know what rock you live under if you missed this story, so I can come live under with you.
Right.
It's impossible.
Well, it was impossible to miss. But Lewis had his debut at Ferrari.
You don't say.
So what happens when you're Lewis Hamilton and you post a pic of you in a suit at Ferrari in front of an F40? Well, that picture goes on to be the most liked image of Instagram's history. That's what happens. So that's what happened. Did you see Jeremy Clarkson's?
Oh, I did not. Did he make fun of it?
It's great. He was in a suit with an overcoat with his draped over his shoulders, standing in front of his Land Rover. It was great.
That's great. That's good.
But there's no doubt Ferrari going to make the absolute most of Lewis's tenure at Ferrari, and so they should. I mean,
And this is preseason.
Yeah.
Right? Every team is great right now. Alpine's great.
Everybody's
Haas is
great. Yeah.
Ferrari's great. It's preseason.
Everybody's great. But they're going to make the most of it, and they should, because they're paying a fortune for him to be there, right? I mean, even diehard Team LH fans who hated Ferrari in favor of Mercedes might even find themselves becoming tifosi now that Lewis is there. I saw a lot of those Homer Simpson backing into the shrub things, you know.
Yeah, and come back out.
Yeah, I saw that literally from Team LH people that I know were slamming Ferrari. Now they're all about Ferrari. Yeah, welcome to the party, pal.
Just remember, they got rid of their best strategist, so good luck.
That's right. So, you know, to be Ferrari is a whole different level. Just telling you.
It's like being a DC sports fan. Good luck.
Yeah, right. It was a foggy, damp day. It always rains at Le Mans. It was a foggy, damp day that Lewis did some running in an older car, and then folks were lined up around the fencing to see the action. It reminded me, Grace, of when Schumacher did his first runs at Fiorano as a Ferrari driver. The faces were plastered to the fence, cameras rolling, and everybody was really excited. Now, as a lifelong Ferrari fan, I tend to be I am more about the team than the drivers, be it Schumacher, Lazy Berger, Fernando, Sebastian. It doesn't matter to me. Right. I'm about the team, right? So Lewis coming to the team doesn't really elevate my heart rate into hype mode levels. It just doesn't do that for me. It may to some, perfectly understandable. He's a 7-time champion. It just doesn't to me. I'm a Ferrari fan over the driver for Ferrari. So he's a terrific driver, no doubt about it. And he's driving for my team, and I suspect that's kind of a little bit how you might feel about McLaren, right? You're a McLaren fan. You've had lots of different drivers come and go, but it's really a McLaren.
Yes, I saw many people that were like, what am I going to do, right? I hated Ferrari, now Lewis is there. And I'm like, come, I'm a McLaren fan, right? Like, I'll teach you.
Right.
Where do you start? Kimi, Alonso? Yeah.
Yeah.
My last driver's championship was Kimi. That's great.
Yeah, that is great. So anyway, that's how I feel. Now, the bigger issue for me is, I'm on the record. I said it, 2 years ago, whatever, that Mercedes shouldn't have offered Lewis this big, massive sum he was wanting, and Toto chose not to, and I think wisely so. I applaud Toto for not doing so. Ferrari did, and I hope Lewis and Ferrari find rude performance and success together. Of course, I'm a Ferrari fan, but in my opinion, there's a difference when Schumacher joined and the people were lined up outside the fencing, and when Lewis joined. Schumacher was joining at the very beginning of his prime, right? Lewis is not. And so the biggest challenge might not be learning. They always talk about, the big challenge for Lewis is learning. It's an Italian team, total different thing. Even Lewis has said that. And I'm sure, that takes a little adjusting for anyone. Even Schumacher will tell you that.
I mean, even you and I, as just regular people, switching a job is switching a job.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's a thing.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that'll be, a challenge in its own. But I think learning how to win at 40 is also going to be a challenge for Lewis, right? He's 40 years old.
Trying to figure it out.
Yeah. So no doubt that his footprint on the sport is huge. And we've not seen that Lewis in the last couple of years. And many wonder, with his teammate George Russell faring much better as Lewis passes his prime, et cetera, et cetera. I'm willing to chalk that up to a short timer syndrome, right? Yeah. He already knew he was leaving. And if I'm honest, I think Lewis relishes those kind of challenges. So joining Ferrari and hearing questions about his abilities may just unleash a level of performance from him as a rejuvenated level. At least that's what I'm hoping as a Ferrari fan. I hope that's how it works out.
I blame Mike Elliott. It's fine. Mercedes could have been better, but
Yeah.
Thanks, Mike.
Right.
He's like the Chris Spangle of Mercedes. I blame Mike Elliott for everything.
Right.
But again, in Formula One, that's always the case. It's 80% the car, right? So much is hidden about his talent. But to think that Lewis is washed up is not the case.
Yeah, no, and I don't think he is. It'd be a telltale. I mean, he comes out the first year. He's got, a ramp up period with the car. It's a different car, different driving style. He may have to adjust. I think, all of us will need to have a little bit of patience there. Lewis of old, which I'm expecting Lewis today, generally, though, is pretty quick at getting on top of those things because he's a hell of a driver. But I think we need to be a little patient if he comes out and Charles does better in his first race. Like, I told you Lewis is over there. No. You need to give him a little time. He's got to acclimate the team, acclimate the system, acclimate the car. Car wasn't designed around him. It'll take a little bit of time. So I think we can all be a little patient with that. But the article I read over Autosport may suggest that it's more than what he does on track. And the team may be perfectly okay if he doesn't best Charles Leclerc at Ferrari, because they are making a mint on his presence at the team through merchandising and sponsor investment. And that's just what happens when you're a 7-time world champ like Lewis, right?
It's Spaceballs the flamethrower.
Exactly. To prove the point, Autosport had this really nice article about the logos that were on his suit on a picture that was released last week, and how much that one photo was worth. So let me read this to you. Hat tip Mark Manbrian over at Autosport. This is his article, his words. I'm just going to read them. It said, on Tuesday, Hamilton then posted a picture of him dressed in a Ferrari race suit for the first time on his social media channels. And the analysis of that post, seen by over 11 million X users by Thursday evening, by Sponsorlytics, showed how those impressions impacted on the team sponsors. The AI-powered sports big data analytics company works with the likes of Women's Tennis Association to measure sports sponsorship and sports data using real-time data tracking. Every logo placement on Lewis's kit delivers incredible value, showcasing the synergy between athletes' social media presence and the team sponsors, said the CEO of Sponsorlytics. Omar Al-Razi, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, using its AI and algorithms, Sportalytics measured the post when it reached the 8 million impression mark and calculated brand values generated from Ferrari sponsors. It discovered that the individual post was worth $62,100 to title sponsor HP, as well as $50,000 to Ferrari itself, while the likes of Shell, IBM, VGW, Siva, and Puma all came in over the $40,000 mark. Those figures were generated from one post just hours after it had been uploaded by Hamilton and before he was even started a Grand Prix for Ferrari. And you have to admit that irrespective of what he does on track, whether he beats Charles or not, that is a huge component. And while I was advising Toto not to pay that huge sum for Lewis, I still think that's the right decision. But I can understand why Ferrari would have. A lot of people thought, why would Ferrari spend that kind of money on Lewis on the tail end of his career, right? It's for that.
That is people, I mean, just like the driver, like if this was a meritocracy and your skill was the only thing that mattered in Formula One, that is that viewpoint, right? Like the idea that like, oh, he's at the end of his career, why wouldn't you bring him on? It's a very you're only looking at one part of his job, right?
Yeah.
And there are people that that are Lewis Hamilton fans that have gotten into the sport because of Lewis Hamilton and that will bring big money to Ferrari. I wish they would have. I saw that article and I wish they would have put how much, like a same picture of Leclerc, right? Like because that does seem like a lot, but I don't know. I mean, like LeBron James is worth a lot, but standing next to AD, maybe it's not as much. I don't know, or
right.
Steph Curry or something like that. Like, I need some comparison because those numbers all seem big, but that's a different. They're transacting at a different level than I am. Maybe that's I don't know what. I need a nice comparison would have helped, but
yeah, it's true.
For sure. All the sponsorships that they bring into the sport, especially because unlike other sports, you have to bring that money into Formula One, right? Like LeBron James has sponsors, but that's just his pocket money. They pay his salary.
Right.
The Lakers continue irrelevant, irregardless of how much money LeBron brings in with the sponsors, right?
Right.
So I think in that sense, that's where it pays boatloads. But I mean, I would take a Lewis Hamilton on his back foot over. I feel bad naming names, but anyway, there are a lot of other people that I'm like, I don't know, I don't want that person, but I take Lewis Hamilton. I'd take Alonso on a bad day or something like that,
Yeah, look, Ferrari, this isn't the first time they've been in Formula One. They know sponsor money. They know how to calculate the ROI, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Ferrari's got to know. I spent, a day with Stefano Lai, who was the head of Ferrari brand globally, super, super smart guy. And so they know how to calculate the ROI in their investment.
Well,
okay.
Know what they're doing.
Yeah. So if we're going to spend umpteen million on Lewis, we're going to gain this much in merchandising, this much in sponsors, and he'll pay for himself in X amount of years. So do a 2-year contract, he'll pay for himself, right? So they'll know that.
Yeah. They know what they're doing.
So go Lewis.
But even if Lewis does well,
well, it's even better,
right?
Yeah, I mean, if he comes out firing on all cylinders and he hasn't lost a nanosecond,
and even for Ferrari at this point, he's not going to come in last, right?
No,
even if you know what I mean, they're one of the top 4 teams. So even if he's still going to be doing well, even if he doesn't do well by Ferrari standards.
I agree. I always kind of look at it as a Ferrari fan. I was thinking, okay, so you got Leclerc and you got Carlos. And I rate Carlos. I really like Carlos. And Paul and I have talked about it on Race Review podcast, and I think Carlos is great, and he's won races for Ferrari. He's been thereabouts. He's had some unforced errors, but so is Charles. Charles
is
what?
Charles is the master of the unforced error, right?
Yeah, right. So from my perspective, I think But when I thought about Lewis replacing Carlos, I thought it's so harsh because I think Carlos is a great fit in that team and great teammate with Charles. But it's Lewis. He's not going to do any worse than Carlos. I'd argue, if he gets on top of the car and the chassis, he'll deliver points just like Carlos. His results will be Carlos or better, and I would expect better. It's
all upside.
It's got to be all upside. I mean,
and Carlos has to know that, right? It hurts. It hurts me, and I am not a member of the Sainz family. But fault them for making that.
The one thing I thought was something, I apologize. Whoever the first person to post it on X, I apologize because I didn't look at the name, but and the person I saw it from may not have been the person that originally posted it, but it was a picture of Lewis's first day next to Carlos's first day.
Oh yeah, and it's just Carlos outside of Williams.
Right.
Like, woo,
there's an entrance awning there, and he's just kind of out there. It's by himself. He's just kind of out there walking into the building, and there's Lewis in a killer suit and an F40 in front of Enzo's house, and this throng of fans and everything. It was like, harsh. Yeah. Way harsh, Ty. All right. Next up, hey Grace.
Yeah.
You're a businesswoman.
Sure.
You've been in business. You've heard, and all of you salespeople out there will know what I'm talking about. You've heard the discussion. Well, Grace, you got to have an elevator speech, right?
Oh yeah, right.
Got to have an elevator speech. It was always difficult in my last job because I don't know, we just did so much stuff, and it's kind of like it's hard to cram that in an elevator speech. We did, but difficult, but. Who knew that Formula One teams would have to get their elevator speech? An elevator speech, for those who don't know, the old sales canard that, you need to be able to describe who you are and what your company does in the amount of time it takes for an elevator ride. So the point is you got to really have a succinct, crisp message about what it is your company does, because you could wax poetic, but you lose people, and you don't, so you need to be succinct, quick, and to the point with your message, right? So for those non-sales related people, that's what an elevator speech is. So anyway, now we've all heard about this, the big F1 car launch, right?
Oh,
at the O2, I know. And you and I, we were so excited. We thought, now this is a good idea. Instead of all these disparate online, we'll stream it from, Zimbabwe, or we'll... we're gonna have drinks and a fruit cake, in Sri Lanka or whatever, with our car, and our car's gonna be done in ice sculpture, and then it'll melt away and show the real. Who knows, whatever. But we thought this would be great to have all the cars. This huge event. They could pack the OT like a Selena Gomez concert or a Taylor Swift concert, and they could pack it full of people. And everybody, all the fans would be there. They'd be all excited. And this would be great. Well, that's not actually how this all goes down, Grace.
No, not at all.
Talk about bait and switch.
Yeah.
No, I expressly asked for the family truckster and sport model in Arctic blue. This is it's a better car, Mr. Griswold. So... they're going to host their first ever all-team launch party at O2. All 10 teams will be presenting their car and drivers at the event. But wait, it's now being suggested that it isn't a car launch, and the teams are now saying that they're going to host their own actual launch as well. So at best, this is a fan event because each team only is given 7 minutes to present their entire message, car, and driver. And you talk about an F1's version of an elevator speech.
Right.
That's going to be really difficult to do. So the teams can use their 7 minutes however they'd like.
Why 7?
I don't know.
Not 10, not 20, 7.
7 minutes. It's an hour and 10 minutes?
That's ridiculous. You could be there you have all day.
If it's like an hour televised, because, okay, you bought broadcast rights for 60 minutes.
Okay, there's this thing, it's called Netflix. and you just stream
it. Stream it on YouTube.
Buying broadcast time. What is this? The 1960s?
It's Liberty Media.
Yeah, you think they might know. It's in the title, right? Like, it's in the name of your company.
Yeah.
Media.
Yeah, they've done it a time or two. But I was thinking I'm going to help them out, Grace.
All right.
So here's what I'm expecting from each team. Here is just some humble and really, really humble suggestions.
I also think these would make great challenges for the Gordon Ramsay segment we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, it would. It would. So I came up with my own list. Grace, add commentary where needed. But I have come up with my own list of ideas that the teams, how they should use that 7 minutes. Okay? Ferrari, we'll start there. Now, Grace and I were both bowled over by their interpretive dance and opera-like interpretive dancing and singing.
Right.
I think they should do it again for 7 minutes with just Lewis standing at the edge of the stage doing the blue steel look from Zoolander. Nothing else.
That's right.
Don't say crap about the car. Have Charles over there sitting on the front tire of one of the cars or something, and just have Lewis standing in that black suit doing the blue steel look and this whole interpretive dance thing going on behind him with some operatic Italian music, and we're done. 7 minutes.
You have to fly Lewis in, though.
Yes, perfect, Grace. Like the Turkish opera that he flew over.
Fly him in.
You got to fly him over the crowd.
In his race suit, fly him in.
Dangerously teetering over the crowd.
That's right.
You got to fly him in, and then he touches the front of the stage, turn around, and does the blue steel. That's it.
That's it.
No one say crap. Nothing. Don't say anything. You're Ferrari. You don't have to say anything. The logo speaks for itself, right?
We're Ferrari.
Yeah, we're Ferrari. Well, you can't say that. Why not? It's a shitbox.
That's the shirt I'm wearing. Perfect.
Yes.
The shitbox edition.
Right. You are wearing the shitbox edition. I love that one. Okay, next up, your team, McLaren. I'll be honest with you, twerking. Lots of twerking.
Who's doing the twerking?
Zach Brown.
Zach, I love you. Do we need to see that?
I think maybe we could.
First of all, Zach's older than I am. At a certain age, your knees can't do it. Like at some point, we all have to go like, we're at like Macarena speed, right? Like all you can do is the arms. That's all you got, right?
You can't do the hokey pokey anymore.
No, that kind of movement, that's just going to send us on a traction.
See, but he's a rebel. He got a tattoo late in life. I think Zach, he's a rebel. He'd be up for doing some twerking, lots of twerking.
Zach
it's too obvious to have Lando do it. The girls would go crazy. So,
I don't know.
Zach twerking, that would be good.
Yeah, maybe he could come out with, Patrick Mahomes, his hair twin, right? Like
that would be cool.
Together,
see,
right?
I think Lando should do the Patrick Mahomes hair.
Yeah.
He could pull it off. He's got that naturally curly hair.
Yeah, exactly.
Looks great.
Alpaca. It'd be good.
Yeah. Let's see. Next up, Mercedes. I think they should finally do a live test of their fully operational battle station and maybe a Toto chokeout of an employee that drops the ball, right? Luke. I just did the Darth Vader, force thing, and something falls off your Burj Khalifa of cat trees there.
I mean, Mikasa, that's great.
It is great.
Thanks for coming.
Yes.
All right.
So they could formally test their fully operational battle station.
I mean, what good is the accent if you can't,
Yeah. Yeah, that would be good. Red Bull. Some sort of wingsuit stunt with a prop plane and like a few BMX bikes.
Right.
The wingsuit flying between mountains and a prop plane that he's got to not use the parachute and he's got to somehow fly back into the prop plane over the crowd or something.
I mean, even they could just put him in the like the Pinewood Derby cars for adult human being racing.
Right. Yeah, like the little the little cars they make and they have to go down the course. You could put Christian Horner in one of those. That'd be good.
No, okay, wait, here's what you do. You put Christian Horner in it, you get him all strapped in, get the helmet on, and then they go, oh, did we tell you who made it? And just bring Sergio Perez laughing out of the darkness in the corner right before they launch him. Right. Oh, I built that for you. Boom, down he goes.
They put Sergio would put a logo sponsor on the side of the car, sponsored by WhatsApp.
Yes,
That would
that's
be good.
right.
That would be good. And then they could also have a BMX bike team with Max showing off his mad BMX skills,
Oh my gosh. There's
like
so
the
many
BMX
things for them to
Bandit.
do.
That would be good. I like
Yeah.
that. Let's see. Aston Martin, a corporate-style KPI review of the fans' lack of enthusiasm and engagement with the brand, and an announcement of no merit increases this year for fans due to the suboptimal enthusiasm on their part.
You know what? There's somebody I'm pretty sure can't fit it all into 7 minutes.
I guarantee it.
Lawrence cannot.
I don't know
he
that
just-
Lawrence could.
Nope. It's going to be
He's
more
got
than
too
7
much to
minutes.
say. He spent too much money. He's all in. He's in too deep now.
You can't hone him in like that.
You can't hem Lawrence Stroll in. You cannot fence him in.
If he wants to speak for 9 minutes, he's going to speak
He's
for 9
the
minutes.
uncontainable Lawrence Stroll. Get that in your heads. Gee whiz.
As long as they ask Lance Stroll a question to which the answer is obviously Fernando Alonso, but he obviously says somebody that's not Fernando Alonso, I'm here for that.
Right. Let's see. Next up, Alpine. I think a brief presentation to Mercedes, like a gift presentation to Mercedes.
Yeah.
They come out with like a Harry and David fruit basket where they call Toto on the stage and they present him the gift basket for allowing them to use their engines this year. And it could be a fruit basket from Harry and David with like frankincense and myrrh in there, and they could just bring that out, hand that to Toto, and said, "Thank you, Toto." I think that's in order. You could do that in 7 minutes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Especially if they wear like a full outfit, like they got to get into character.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Being the wise men, right?
Yeah. Wearing the robes and the camels.
Yeah.
And yes, perfect.
And they just wheel the engine out on the
Yeah, just the hell with the car. Just don't bring the car out, show us your livery. Nobody
wheel
gives a
the
damn. Just
engine.
bring the engine out. That's all we really want to see, right?
That's right.
Let's see. For Haas, I think this is a good idea, Gene. So now hear me out on this one, Gene. Bring a full Haas CNC machine out, right? And make a CNC cutout of little Ollie Behrman key fobs for the kids.
There you go.
And then while they're making those, Gene could do his sort of Frank Sinatra monologue style with a cigarette or whatever, and talk about why he didn't fire Gene earlier and that kind of thing. Just kind of he's just filling time. It's like stretch. He's just filling time so they can make as many key fobs for the kids as possible, right?
Oh my gosh.
That way he gets to say all this made possible by Haas CNC.
As if the kids can't now do that themselves.
Well, yeah, they could do that on a cheap printer, 3D printer.
Right, but you're right.
But see, all these little kids, one day,
machine.
they're going to grow up to buy a several $100,000 Haas. That's what he's, see? It's advertising, going for the kids. Gene, leave our kids alone. So there you go. Let's see. RB or whatever they're called now. I have no idea what they're called.
I don't know. I think I'm just going to start calling him Toro Rosso again.
Why
it's
not?
All the way back around.
Yeah. Toro Rosso. It worked for me.
Fine.
Let's see. Helmo will lead a full-on fraternity-style hazing event on Hajar and Sonoda, where
As if Red Bull already isn't a fraternity-style hazing event.
right. But in this special episode, he's going to come out. They'll have an artificial tree brought out with a limb like 6 feet off the ground, and one of the drivers, probably Sonoda, will have to hang from his hands from that tree limb and not fall, while the other driver has to run around the outside of the entire O2 arena with 3 cases of Red Bull before his teammate drops off that tree.
Oh my
A
God.
great hazing event, an oldie but a goodie. But there you go. I think that'll set the tone for RB going into the season.
In case you were wondering what team you were at, Yuki Tsunoda.
Yes.
Here's what you're going to have to do
Lest
for the
you
next 7
forget.
minutes.
That's right. Lest you forget, you drop off that tree, Yuki.
Goodbye, good luck, and good riddance.
That's helmet, Marco
And
helmet.
No, Red Bull would bring that up for the whole season. Wow, did you see him with the tree? We can't have that
Can't
at Red
have
Bull.
that.
Did you see him? He fell off the tree. We
Can't
can't
have
have
that. We got to get Sergio
gonna-
back.
He's going to bring our team into disrepair. We can't have
Disrepute or disrepair, either one.
that. Disrepute is
Whatever.
what I meant, but sure, we'll go with that.
Disrepair, that's fine. Let's see. Williams, hear me out on this, Grace.
Okay.
I think this would work. I think this will work. A chair, a small side table, darkened stage, a little bit of a lamp over, like a reading lamp over the chair.
Yeah.
A bottle on the table with a wine glass, preferably probably a cab.
Okay.
Quiet. Out walks James Vowles. He sits down in the chair, pulls out a leather-bound book, and proceeds to read some of the world's most famous poetry about engineering. As Carlos periodically comes out and refills his wine glass.
What is Alex doing?
No, he doesn't care about Alex. He's got Carlos. He doesn't care.
I'm sure
Alex
cares about
well,
Alex.
I care about Alex. I love Alex. Alex is great. But, it's all about Carlos now. So, Carlos brings out, fills up a wine, and he just reads the most riveting poetry ever written about engineering. I think.
Okay, I don't think that exists. But
I don't think it does either. That's why I would like to see it happen. Because if it does exist, I'm not aware of it.
And especially in James's very dry monotone.
That's
right?
what I'm saying. His very dry, delivery.
Yeah.
It'd be perfect.
That's great. I think that'll be great.
It kind of just, it kind of brings things down from the big explosive beginning.
Yes.
Kind of bring it down a little bit, calm the room down, and then you send it over the moon with Sauber.
Oh, yes, for sure.
Yep. And what you do is you have Mattia. He'll turn the entire 7 minutes into a showroom-style presentation of the newest Audi A3, bragging about their WRC heritage and superior all-wheel drive, as Nico does the sign language interpretation over at the side and advances the PowerPoint slides.
You know what? Speaking of somebody who needs to get the alpaca haircut, Mattia Bonato.
He does.
Sir, what are you doing with your
He
life?
needs the Ollie Behrman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he could totally, him and Lando Norris, that would be great.
Do you
I
think
would be here
Paul's
for that.
going for the alpaca thing, maybe? He kind of grew his hair out.
He doesn't have the curls though,
Yeah,
right?
he could get a perm,
but-
though. Could you imagine
could.
Charsley with a tight perm? That'd be awesome.
As someone who once had a tight perm, it's not
It's
good.
not good.
Don't
Yeah,
don't do it.
it's not
don't
good.
do it. But I think that Bonato should definitely just grow it out and then just shave the
Right.
sides. It would be great. I'm here for that.
But look, listen up. Audi's in this to sell cars, so we're not even going to talk about F1. Have you thought of the benefits owning a really nice A3, and just turn it into a car sales thing? Everything they do
No.
post race should be talking about Audi cars.
So most of the launches aren't car launches, they're livery launches. So what they should do, bring out the A3, but put the livery of the F1 car on it.
That's even a better
right?
idea. Have the F1 livery on the A3.
It's a livery launch.
It is a livery launch. It
It's not even on the right car. It's fine.
doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Pretend it's a Formula One car.
Right. That's perfect. All right. So those are just my ideas. Let me know what your ideas are. Those are mine.
All right.
Thought that would work. All right. Let's do some.
Again.
Yeah.
And again, Gordon, we've written out your whole season.
Season 1 is in the can.
Done.
All right. You can start production on that. Grayson will come up with season 2.
And an hour podcast, we've got this solved.
Yeah,
We
it's
can do
done.
this.
All right. Let's do some Alvin's Cats. What do you got?
All right. There's no music?
Oh, yeah. We could do some music. Let me find some music over here. What
right,
do
I
we
mean-
got? I got some music. I got to find some here. And it's time for Alvin's Cats, that moment where we talk about nonsense in Formula One or any other motorsport. Oh, that's what we do. All right, Grace.
I like that this is the nonsense section.
It
as
is the
opposed
nonsense.
to the
The rest
previous
of the podcast?
hour.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Everything else you just
I
listened
know.
to, not nonsense.
I know.
This, total nonsense.
Well, it totally is, and everybody's like,
Get to the show!
This is
"It's
the show.
the show."
It's off season, people.
All right.
You should be lucky that you got this much news. At this
I
time
know.
of the
Normally
year.
there's none.
There's nothing.
All right.
So thank you, MBS. Right. So there is that. So it's been a pretty quiet week, with
Mm-hmm.
the exception of so much Ferrari content that
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I get it. You have Lewis. That's great. Like, relax, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got it. We're good. So, and through all that, I really only have one Albon's Cats, but it's worth it. I think it's a golden. So, it's a little story time with Grace. So get your James Vow, your glass of wine, your smoking jacket.
Is it about Ferrari?
It is not about Ferrari.
This is Enzo Ferrari.
Oh, okay. All right.
It's about how small of a world this is.
Oh, okay.
So, I'm just like, I'm waiting to start my life, and I'm just scrolling the social medias. I'm looking at Facebook, and a friend of mine, Amber, she posts, she has two sons, and one of her sons is going to a video game camp this summer. And one of her sons is going to a NASCAR camp, and asking for advice of how to survive a week-long NASCAR camp. Well, I can't miss this opportunity. I'm like, well, I can't really offer you any help with NASCAR because my knowledge of NASCAR is like 26 years dated at this point. I know nothing about what's going on in the world of NASCAR. But, Amber, if your son ever gets into Formula One or MotoGP, just let me know. I'm here to help, right? Like, if that leap ever happens, just let me know. And so, we go back and forth. And then her friend chimes in. Her friend Rod goes, oh, my gosh. I just freaking started listening to I just started listening to the Park for May, and I can't believe Amber. So Amber knows Rod from high school. I know Amber from when I used to go to church here. She now lives in Nashville, so she lives neither in Texas nor DC, lives in Nashville. And it just happens that Rod was just like, I can't believe it that you actually know the person whose podcast I now listen to. So Rod, welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you for the connection. It's pretty great. And it just goes to show the world really is a very small place. And NASCAR can be the great uniter, which I never would have thought either. And shout out. Thanks, Rob.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, right? It was just really funny that, like, oh, right. I forget that, I am a real person and there are real people out there that listen to this. So.
It is weird. I got a call last week. So I'm kind of like, looking around for a different job. And I got a call last week from a recruiter who apparently must have saw my LinkedIn or something, and it was a super nice guy. And we were chatting about it, and he said, "Well, I see you're into F1." He goes, "Yeah, I just got into F1," and so he basically, the job was not a good fit, but he was basically calling because he saw on my LinkedIn or CV or whatever that I did the Park for May, and so he wanted to talk about Formula One. So we talked about Formula One. It was great. We were talking about the podcast, everything else. It's kind of funny, how that works.
That reminds me of one. Flip has not gotten pulled over in the Corvette very often, given the fact that it's a Corvette and the cops totally sit in your blind spot trying to track you, right? So, but the one time he did get pulled over when I was with him. And I just thought it was very funny because at first the cop is, being very cop-like and sir, how fast you were going. We weren't going that fast. They always go back to run the tags. I'm pretty sure they're disappointed because it's pretty clean. And he comes back and there's this clear moment when he goes from like, cop, sir, do you know how fast you're going to like, yo, so what do you got in this? Well, I noticed that your back end is in stock. What do you like? I just think people pull him over because they just want to like talk about his car.
Right.
So it's the same sort of like there's this moment of like I'm very professional to like, hey, so I listen to your podcast. What's going on?
Yeah,
right.
Right.
Who are you going to talk to this week?
Right.
So I think it's always really funny when people kind of like switch to that. And
it is.
I do meet people that like recognize my artwork because like at work, of course, we've moved to like corporate like screen background for your Zoom meetings, and I'm like, but I spent so much time on this.
Right.
Like,
right.
I mean, if you go back and watch old podcasts, you can see how we've added
the evolution
things and
Yeah.
Like, I spent a lot of time on all this. I'm not putting up some background. Thanks a lot.
I know. I all those calls on Teams and stuff. Everybody blurs their background and has some silly picture of some conference room or like. I never did that. I just left mine, and more often than not. I mean, okay, kill me. I'm a guitar player, so there's some guitars in the back, and there's some books, whatever, But inevitably, it would come up. Oh, you see, you're into racing. Yes, I am.
And thanks for noticing.
Yeah, probably, mentally ill levels of into racing. Yes, I am. Anyway, all right, you ready for some no shit headlines?
I'm ready. I'm always ready.
All right.
I was born ready.
First one. Toto Wolff blown away by 7-year-old son's driving ability after track session. Really?
I'm pretty sure he knows.
Really?
He's noticed.
I mean, what parent isn't blown away by their child's whatever, right?
What, you mean my child isn't the next coming of Michael Schumacher? What are you talking about?
Right. What do you, my child is, of course he is, Toto.
Or Jack is.
Why? Because that's Toto's retirement plan right there. Let's see.
It's a pretty good one, maybe.
It's a really good one. Attaboy, Toto. Let's see. Next one up. Lewis Hamilton suffered F1 test crash and left car unrepairable ahead of debut. I don't,
Okay.
Really?
He did?
Huh?
That, surprisingly, in the 7,000 hours of Ferrari content this week, that didn't get mentioned.
That's what I'm saying. If I read that headline and you were like, what? When did that happen?
It did?
That was a crap headline after the umpteen million hours of coverage it got, and nobody heard that. I tend to like this one. I think Paul will too. Quote, I funded Valtteri Bottas' career and got him into Mercedes. Now he's blanking me. I'm thinking, Valtteri, you don't have a ride next year. At this point, is it a good idea to blank billionaires that supported your career? Don't burn those bridges.
I don't.
Yeah.
If there was ever a story you shouldn't read more of, this is it. I'm afraid of
Don't
what
read
might
that
come
story,
up.
because I don't know where this Finnish billionaire is going with all of this. But yeah, you may not want to read that story.
I'm just saying, just walk away. Don't.
Yeah.
It's going to affect your search history.
Now, this will become a little bit of a surprise. Shocking headline. Red Bull falling apart as Max Verstappen's dad raises big concerns for 2025. Is
They're
there
falling apart because of Jos Verstappen.
Is there any possible way to shut Max's dad up for a season?
No, again, this is when everybody was like, oh, Jos Verstappen. Like, okay, we know that guy. You know what I mean? Like some of the parents, you're right, we don't know.
But we know that guy.
We've met him, just as himself, just as a person. Like I knew.
Yeah, and we know some of the stories too.
This is like somebody getting mad about Nelson Piquet Jr. Have you met his dad? We know him.
We know him. Yeah, right.
We know exactly what that's about.
I don't.
Or if Jacques Villeneuve had a son who got into racing, yeah, we've met JV.
He may feel that way, and maybe even Max feels that way, but when he does this crap, he's not making it easy for his son. He makes everything more difficult for Max. This is just white noise that Max doesn't need, It's silly. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents. All right, let's do some mailbag, man.
All right, let's do it.
You've got mail.
This one, Jen the newbie asked this. I'm curious about your opinions on the possibility of this happening. At Ferrari, Lewis and Stroll compete and take points from each other so that neither wins the WDC. Okay. And the same thing happens at McLaren, and Max Verstappen runs up the middle to a 5th championship, and Ferrari takes the constructors. What do you think?
So this okay. So
Melton,
all,
what do you think? Melton's watching us.
I don't think that this makes it sound like Max. It's not like Chipo's and Esteban Ocon gets it, right? Like Max Verstappen is definitely in the running for the WDC. I mean, right? Like that's not. It's not a foregone conclusion that he won't just get it, right? Like even this last year, it was a little.
Yeah.
He lost a few more races, but it still was pretty dominant in his favor. So I think that that's still likely to happen. But so you would have because it's more than just your teammate taking points, right? You'd also have to have it's also the 4, 5, 6 way of those 3 teams taking points off of each other so much that Max wins the WDC. But I like this idea of trying to make it so that Ferrari wins the constructors, but not the driver's championship in either scenario.
Yeah.
So I'm here for any sort of I love the crazy math, if Max finishes third and Lando Norris ends up on the moon and Oscar Piastri drives around the wrong track, guess what? Lewis Hamilton's going to win the Road Drivers' Championship. So
it could happen, Jen. When you look at McLaren last year.
Yes.
The whole papaya rule thing came up because you've got Oscar taking points out of Lando, right? And Lando was closer in the Drivers' Championship. So, that does have that impact, and you could see something like that. Also, on the Max thing, the only curveball I'd throw is we don't know how Liam Lawson's going to do in that car. If he's on song and he's scoring a lot of points that Sergio didn't last year, so if he's scoring a lot of points, I'm not saying he's beating Max, but scoring a lot of points, yeah, you never know.
I don't think that's going to be allowed. I think the Alonso clause is
it
going
might.
to come into business.
Yeah, it might, because that team's built around Max. But yeah, it's interesting. I think if Lewis is there, but I will say the one thing that's different here with Lewis and Charles is Lewis coming into Ferrari is different than when Seb came into Ferrari. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but it kind of is. When Seb was there, he was the established four-time champ, and then Charles came. And they were behind Charles. This was the young, new phenom, and his job was to knock Seb's feet off the desk. That's not necessarily what we have here. Lewis isn't really coming in to knock Charles' feet off the desk necessarily. They know what they have in Lewis. They've got a 7-time champ. They hope he can come in and dominate, of course, but they're also very much behind Charles, for the long term, right? So yeah, I don't know. It could be interesting. I will say that I don't think Charles is going to step aside for Lewis or play wet nurse or anything like that. We didn't see it with Seb. He banged wheels with Seb and had no issue with it. And it'll be the same with Charles. He's not going to put up with it.
No, and I think this is it's as much as this is do or die for Lewis, it's definitely do or die for Charles. Earlier we were talking about him having his unforced error years, right? So I think he's finally getting to the point where it's he's not just doing that all the time, right? Even if that's just our perception of it,
right?
So if he's at I guess we have peak Leclerc and peak Hamilton colliding at the same time, it's pretty good for this fan.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. It's a good question, Jen. Be interesting to see how this works out. All right, well, that does it for this podcast. It's what we think about the news. You let us know what you think about the news. You can do that at theparkferme.com. Share your opinion. As always, a huge thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. We could not and would not do this podcast without. Thanks for joining us, Milton. Appreciate it. And also, if you like this podcast, go over to your favorite player, give us a good rating, give us some love over there. We'd appreciate it. As always, share it with a friend. Tell somebody about it. Don't hoard it. Don't hoard it to yourself. Share it on social media would be great. You can also watch these podcasts on our YouTube channel. Hit the like and bell icon or whatever it is that YouTube wants you to do. Right. That would be great as well. So until next week, when we come back and we find some news to talk about, we'll do it all over again. This is Todd, a.k.a. Negative Camper, saying so long, Grace.
See you next week.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.